So hello and welcome to Fuel Poverty Action series of monthly learning sessions, Fuel for Thoughts from Fuel Poverty to Climate Justice. Fuel Poverty Action is a group of ordinary people who are fed up with being robbed by greedy energy companies through spiraling bills and rip-off prepayment meters. We campaign to protect people from fuel poverty. We challenge rip-off energy companies and unfair policies that leave people to endure cold homes. That means that we take action for warm, well-insulated homes and clean and affordable energy that's under the control of people and communities, not private companies. As for Fuel for Thought, where we are here tonight, it's our space to share research and lived experience, tackle lies, and clear up confusion as we ask and answer questions with experts, activists, and campaigners. And this week, we're here to talk about the failure of government retrofitting and how to overturn it. Because, as a lot of you will be aware, I'm sure, the government's attempt to fund home improvements have scandalously failed. These were paid for by an increase on our energy bills, and the majority of home alterations failed. Thousands are now living in worse conditions, while profiteering private companies have pocketed taxpayers' money, sacked their workers, and closed shop, leaving overwhelmed residents to fight for their homes alone. These failed insulation schemes have given retrofit a bad name and stoked the burning of green policies at a time when we need to redouble our efforts to put out the fossil fuel fires that are warming our planet. Cost of living, job insecurity, conflict, and climate change all link back to our reliance on fossil fuels, and upgrading existing homes with properly installed insulation and low energy heating technologies is still the best way to lower energy consumption and bills. It's the answer to coming back to comfortable and dignified homes with energy spending that's under control. And if properly resourced and delivered at scale, a retrofit program led by communities, workers, and trade unions can create a lot of secure high-skilled jobs nationwide that would contribute to a fairer, safer, and more sustainable future. So the benefits are too big to forego. Let's not let another government failure get in the way of justice now and a more just future. It's time to make retrofit work for us. And tonight we're going to hear from 4 speakers at the forefront of this challenge. First, we're going to hear from Susan Challenger, who, following serious problems caused by insulation works to her home in North Wales, sought help through a Facebook support group where she connected with Fuel Poverty Action. Susan is now part of a working team helping to highlight the lived experience of retrofit failures and the need for safer, consumer-focused outcomes. Susan, thank you very much for being with us tonight. I am going to get your slides up. Just bear with me for 1 minute.
Thanks, Amal. Whilst you're getting those slides up, so my name's Susan Challenger, based in North Wales, working with Callum from Fuel Poverty Action, introduced through a wider Facebook group, as Amal has sort of said. So my focus really over the last couple of months is to raise awareness of the issues with Eco4 from a personal experience and to try and with other people to drive some change for those responsible for making that change. Just wait for the slides. The slides up. Perfect. Thank you. This story has also been shared with Wales Against Scams group as well, and I've slightly modified it for this particular session. So the main sort of crux of the slide really is to tell my Eco4 story, what went wrong, and with my install, and also from a victim's perspective, why things went wrong. And Amal, as part of a previous session, has asked if I could add to my thoughts onto this slide as to some of the key changes that may help current victims where Eco4 did not go to plan, and also future schemes. First slide. So my started in 2023. So I had a whole house retrofit. So this included solar panels, an air source heat pump, hot water upgrades, heating improvements, and internal wall insulation. All were operating well. However, within months, there were serious problems appearing with the internal wall insulation. The next one. So serious issues, you see some on the photos there. Serious issues began to emerge where moisture became trapped behind internal insulation, causing mold and spread of dry rot. Dry rot spreads at about 1 meter every 6 months. So serious stuff. Next one. So because of the seriousness of the issue, I had to take action. Even though the installer was alerted, I had to get contractors in to strip out the information that was affected, that was showing the dry rot, and it was happening over about 1.5 rooms. So that was just over 1.5 rooms. And what that meant is that I was left with no floor in one room for about 8 months. This was all escalated to Trustmark and to the installer. Next slide was, as you can see, it was a year later. Oh, could we go back a slide? Thanks. Yeah, so 1 year later, insulation was removed as it was deemed unsuitable, leaving my house in a bad state of disrepair. And today, almost 3 years on from the start of the original install, repairs have just started, which is a good thing, but it's taken 3 years, or 2 years to get to this point, first year from the install. I'm now back dealing with the installer for remediation as support from the Trustmark and all of the governance bodies, including Ofgem, DRO, and countless other, have been woeful. Next slide, please. So the cause of my retrofit failure. So I do have a bit of background in architecture. So I do know a bit about building regs and everything else. So, and it was not caused by one isolated issues. Failures happened at several levels. First of all, survey issues. The person who turned up to the survey didn't do any moisture assessments of the property, inaccurate assumptions about the building, such as assuming there was a damp-proof course when there wasn't. That was all passed through and approved based on wrong information. And secondly, the installation failure. There was poor workmanship and detailing that trapped moisture rather than managing it effectively. The install team didn't install it as per the spec, as per specification for the material and the SWIP system used. And then finally, oversight failures. So nobody attended my house to look at it to see whether everything was okay. So I'm assuming work was supposedly signed off despite the serious problems. And I have to say, I'm not entirely clear to this day whether the oversight on my house was deliberate or down to a lack of experience and skills. Next slide, please. So the customer care framework that is there to support me did not support me. When I reached for help, I was ignored and dismissed and passed over from group to group. The customer care framework, as I say, is not fit for purpose. When things go wrong, there are multiple organisations involved. This slide shows my journey through it and where I was constantly ignored, sent back and forth to different groups, but no single organisation took ownership. And I'm not alone here. It is a fragmented system that is difficult to navigate, and I fear to think how vulnerable customers are being supported through all of this. I've got a glimpse from the groups that I'm working with. So next slide. So there's been 3 years of eco misery for me. So it's 3 years of upheaval and misery for me from the start of the install to now. The install should have taken 6 weeks and it took 3, as well as a significant impact on my, don't know, as well as a significant impact on my living conditions. I've also suffered a serious health incident. I spent 36 hours in A&E because I collapsed and I was suffering from concussion. Anxiety, that was just before Christmas as well. I suffer from and suffering badly for the first couple of years with anxiety, sleeplessness, and spent a significant amount of personal time and sacrifice trying to research, understand what went on, who can help me. And unfortunately, this is the story for many. Remediation work has started this week and is still to continue for months. I can't get to my shower at the moment because there's a load of rubble in front of it. So it's just continuing, but it's progress. Next slide, please. So there's a widespread system failure, trying to work with systems for years, trying to do the right thing. Systems don't support me, even though I provided countless thousands of photos, an independent expert witness report, and multiple things which clearly indicate there's a failure. What happened to my house and how to resolve it required leadership that was lacking, accountability, knowledge, and expertise. And these bodies are not equipped to support customers when things go wrong at all. I normally waited weeks or months for basic responses, and the Trustmark surveyor who turned up at my house, he was not sure he was there. I was not knowledgeable of insulation. It's just throughout, it's just been a miserable experience. So I was asked to put some thoughts for eco reform. I do have a background in governance and delivery frameworks, so I do have some thoughts on this. But as a customer, I clearly do not fully understand the full background and setup of the government framework for retrofit. However, based upon my lived experience and seeing similar stories from other victims, I believe several practical reforms may improve retrofit outcomes. First, eco credits. The energy suppliers who fund this work get eco credits. They should be linked to real world performance rather than design. So my house has been cold, my heating bills have gone up. Other people have had heat pumps installed and they've not been delivering the promised savings. Second, retrofit professionals should be measured against actual energy saving outcomes in households. Projects get approved and signed off based upon promised savings, and those savings aren't realised. Fourth, every household should have one named eco case lead with authority to coordinate and support when things go wrong. Fifth, we need truly independent an oversight body focusing on real outcomes and transparency, both current eco for victims with the find and fix and future retrofit programs. 6, installer performance should include customer care and communication standards. There should be some sort of customer feedback at the end of it, because they're the people who are often forgotten. And finally, warranties and insurance protection needed strengthening, particularly when companies cease trading, which many are. There are practical recommendations focused on improving. These are the practical recommendations really on improving quality, accountability, and consumer confidence. Fine. Next slide. So I fully and wholeheartedly support retrofit when it's done well, and it must continue to slow climate change. We do need warmer homes, lower emissions, and reduced fuel poverty, but future programs must learn and can learn from failures. This is an opportunity to really take an overhaul, learn from the reality of the situation rather than hiding away from it and carrying on regardless into the warmer homes scheme. And older housing stock often carries moisture risks and complexity, and vulnerable households need stronger protections and clearer pathways for support. This is serious stuff. It takes a technical, experienced individual to come in and understand the moisture management and all of the aspects of the house which are critical to design a solution that actually works. And success should not be simply measured by installation numbers, which they currently are, but by whether homes are genuinely warmer, healthier, and safer. That's it for me. So thank you so much for your time, everybody. That's my experience, and that's kind of where I'm at with my thoughts. I don't know
Thank
whether you
you.
had a chance for questions just now.
Thank you very, very much for that, Susan. Much appreciated. Have you sharing your thoughts and yeah, and those demands that you had at the end. Um, we are going to keep the questions for the end, but if people would like to, share some thoughts, some immediate thoughts, some immediate questions, please just put them in the chat if you're worried you're not going to be able to remember them for later. Okay. Next up, we're going to hear from Ellen Robotham, who is a Unite member, part of the CACC steering group, a member of the CACC steering group, and author of the energy chapter in the campaign against climate change, trade unions, climate jobs, building a workforce for the climate emergency. Alan, thanks for being here with us tonight. And I should also mention, and perhaps I should have mentioned this right at the beginning as well, is Ellen was instrumental in coordinating this session with me. Thank you for that, Ellen.
Right, thanks, Amal, and thank you very much to Susan for sharing that horrendous experience. I think it really drives it home just how important it is to get this right and how horrible it is when it isn't. And I think one of the things that really leapt out to me was the failure for like the survey and the initial assessment that wasn't done properly, and that is so crucial, as is monitoring afterwards to to check for the basically the performance gap, to find out, if anything's gone wrong, to make sure that savings are actually happening that have been promised. However, thanks for also mentioning that it is really important that we do this, even though there's a lot of things that need to change. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my slides there. Come on. Right, I'm clicking share. Oh no, that's right. Can people see that?
Not quite yet, Ellen, but I'm sure it will come up anytime soon. Nope, it's not coming up.
Don't know what's happened there then. Because I've gone to the host tools.
Yep.
Share screen, which did work when I did it prior to the meeting.
Is it not opening a window for you from where you can then... No?
No, it's supposed to open a window that lets you choose what screen you want to share, doesn't it?
Yes.
That isn't happening.
Not that, Ellen. Do you want to... do you want to ping them over and I can share them? That feels like the quickest solution right now.
Right, okay, let me try. Oh gosh. Actually, shall I just read? Because it's they're not pictures, it's just text anyway. So shall I just read?
Yeah, go for it. Whatever works for you, Ellen.
Okay, right. I'll have a go. And obviously people can alert me if there's if anything doesn't make sense. But yeah, I mean, obviously Susan's pictures were really important to see because it really shows you. But yeah, it's just text here. So basically, we're going off in a slightly different direction here, but just that I think it has to be really, really emphasised that climate change is still absolutely the biggest threat facing the working class, and by that I mean, everybody who isn't like, a corporate investor or whatever. So, we're looking at, and there was a report that came out only yesterday from the Climate Change Committee that just showed how poorly adapted we are in the UK for this. We're looking at food shortages, food prices through the roof, millions of people potentially losing their homes and their livelihoods to flood damage and storm surges, and a massive rise in the cost of living. And also these factors feeding the kind of racist and climate denialist narratives of the far right that are taking hold, rising levels of violence, making life unsafe, undermining community solidarity and the collective action that we need to protect ourselves. We're seeing serious health risks from excessive heat, poor nutrition, water shortages, new viruses and insect-borne diseases, mental health impacts, etc. And within the next few decades, there is the potential for such drastically harsher winters and hotter summers that in the worst case scenario, the UK could actually become uninhabitable. So let's not lose sight of that. The condition of our homes is key to coping with this onslaught. And that's a good enough reason in itself for an urgent programme of retrofitting for weather resilience and obviously cost of living reasons. But beyond that, unless we actually tackle the reliance on fossil fuels, which is the main direct cause of global heating, the consequences will be catastrophic beyond imagining. But realizing that homes have an absolutely key role here, without action to fix the energy waste in our homes, there's very little chance of stopping the emissions that are wrecking lives and the lives of generations to come. So home heating causes around 19% of UK greenhouse gas emissions. And yet, so the government's real flagship policy on climate action is very much emphasising the move to clean power, i.e. clean electricity generation. But the fact is that around 85% of UK homes are still heated with gas, and that isn't being addressed with the kind of seriousness that's needed. So, I mean, the latest available government statistics are actually from 2022, but bearing in mind that was still, we were still in partial lockdown then. And so actually things are worse than what they look from this. So home heating contributes, the direct burning of gas contributes about 13 to 14% of UK greenhouse gas emissions. But also homes make up around 40% of total electricity use, which equates to another 5 to 6% of greenhouse gas emissions from the gas that's burnt in power stations. And we need to bear in mind that it's not just the carbon dioxide from burning the gas, just all gas use contributes to methane emissions from flaring and venting during the extraction of the gas and from leakage during transmission. So anything that involves using or burning gas is a problem because methane is an extremely powerful greenhouse gas, particularly in the short term, in between 10 to 20 years of it being emitted. And also burning it in your home increases rates of, increases nitrous oxide in the air. And this is also a powerful greenhouse gas that contributes a lot to lung diseases. A lot of people don't realise that either. But as well as being, let me just go back a moment. not to worry. Sorry. Sorry, I'm just laughing slightly here.
No problem. Take your time, Ellen.
Right. Okay. So, yeah. But homes are also, I think it's really helpful to think of homes as being an integral, a crucial integral part of the wider energy system. So not to look at it separately from the way we look at electricity generation, transmission, and so on. It's part of that. If we're going to decarbonise, and I'm basing this partially on the work that was done in actually writing that little book about climate jobs, building a workforce for the climate emergency. We calculated that decarbonising the energy system means obviously eliminating oil and gas burning, but also perhaps doubling the amount of electricity generated, generating all of that only from renewables. Massive challenge just there. Also reinforcing the grid to cope with the additional supply. And very crucially here, I've put this in italics, which you can't see, but reducing overall energy demand across all sectors by maybe 50 to 60%. Now, this is huge. Reducing energy demand is the biggest part of the challenge, and it's essential. We can't decarbonise otherwise. And also managing, balancing the grid and managing the balance between supply and demand when you've got fluctuating energy supply, but also peaks and troughs in demand. And retrofitting homes makes an essential contribution to those crucial bits. So as well as eliminating gas and reducing overall energy needs, it also reduces those peaks in demand. It reduces the burden on the grid by if we've got domestic and local energy generation, and it also reduces the burden on grid level storage because we've got local battery storage and domestic battery storage, and it contributes to system flexibility, but only, of course, when it's done right. For the leakiest homes, a package of basic measures like loft, wall or floor insulation, new windows, draft stripping could cut energy use by at least 50%, reduce those peaks in demand, and help, and very crucially, help to keep the house cool in a heat wave, because we're not doing anything like enough to protect people from excess heat, which is already killing people, and it will do far more so in the future. So obviously, solar panels and batteries reduce demand on the grid and aid this crucial load spreading by using the electricity at times of peak demand. An electric heat pump is about 3 times more energy efficient than a gas boiler, and again can also remove excess heat during heat wave. Solar collectors, another thing, can gather heat energy from the sun and transfer it to a water tank for later use, aiding load spreading again. And the same with thermal batteries, which can store heat generated during off-peak times. So just jumping on to the current Warm Homes Plan, which commits £15 billion of government spending during this Parliament, of which low-income schemes, so schemes to support retrofit in low-income households, 5 billion, consumer loans to households who can afford to pay with a loan, 2 billion, the boiler upgrade scheme, which is currently the main vehicle for subsidising heat pumps, 2.7 billion, other programmes 1.5 billion, and the Warm Homes Fund 2.7 billion, some of which will probably go on grid upgrades, not necessarily directly into homes. So although there's 5 billion to low income schemes, there's still quite a strong onus on individual householders. So, consumer choice, if you like. And it's not going to close the affordability gap for a lot of people who are not eligible for the low income schemes, but still don't have a lot of spare cash. And also it's been noted by the Green Building Council that there's probably too much emphasis on the solar panels, the batteries, the heat pumps, and so on, and not enough emphasis on the fabric upgrades, the insulation. So is this enough? And I'm saying an emphatic no, because look, compare this 15 billion for the Warm Homes Plan with the tens of billions that have been committed to ineffective technologies like carbon capture and storage, which is a massive subsidy to the fossil fuel industry, which is causing the problem in the first place. 3 billion in energy company profits from UK operations just in the first 3 months of this year. And then think that even if that whole 15 billion was spent directed solely onto the direct labour costs and materials for the 5 million most fuel poor and leaky homes, what is that? That's £3,000 each, nowhere near enough to cover a basic package of measures. None of this makes sense when homes burn more gas and produce more emissions than power stations, and when the rollout of renewable electricity needs these deep reductions in energy use. Just quickly, so climate action clearly is a jobs issue and a union issue. And in our booklet, we estimated that a retrofit workforce of 2 million needed to be built up over a period of 10 years. That's including, the technical trades, retrofit assessors and planners and so on. And the majority of these would be probably new entrants to the labour market, job seekers and workers needing financial support and training to update their skills or move from a different sector. The existing construction workforce, which I guess Linda's probably going to touch on, is very poorly unionised and concentrated in small businesses with slim profit margins and not much ability to pay for upskilling or to support decent apprenticeships and work experience. And then, of course, workers in roles that are directly impacted by the energy transition, such as gas engineers and other people employed in fossil fuel supply chains, need protection of their incomes and their job quality, and they need guaranteed access into the new jobs or support to move into another sector altogether if that's what they want. So there is a Warm Homes Plan workforce task force that's been set up, which is a collaboration between the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero and the TUC. And at the minute, it's working on 5 main themes, which are job quality, sector resilience, strategic local delivery, skills provision, and the future of gas workers. However, nothing's been publicly reported yet. I think we're awaiting a report in November. I need to stop very, very shortly, but I just wanted to point out as well that another reason why this is so important is the way that climate action is under such intense attack from the parties and movements of the far right, which are largely funded, of course, by fossil fuel interests and attempting to create a lot of public reaction against and political reaction against climate action. And so the benefits of campaigning for the sort of climate measures that not pretending that we're not talking about climate, because we do need to always emphasize that that climate change is a threat, but it doesn't mean that obviously campaigning climate measures that create good employment, that tackle the cost of living and that improve lives rather than making life more expensive with ineffective solutions, and making sure that working class people don't have to foot the bill, then it's not just about warm homes and protecting the climate. It's also about it's also an argument that's on the front line in terms of combating the far right and the damage that does. I will leave it there, but there are more thoughts to come back to perhaps later on in the discussion.
Thank you very much for that, Ellen. Much appreciated. I think you covered a lot there in terms of just how important retrofitting is, not just for the climate, but far beyond as well, into our politics, essentially. Yeah. Next up, we're going to hear from Professor Linda Clark, who is an emeritus professor at Westminster Business School and a researcher at the Centre for the Study of the Production of the Built Environment, specializing in labour, vocational education and training, diversity and industrial relations in construction across Europe. And I think Linda is going to speak to remedying national retrofitting efforts with special attention to training and delivery, which builds on nicely on what Ellen had to say. Thank you so much, Linda, for being here with us this evening.
Well, thank you, Amal. And can you share my slides for me?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank
Let me
you.
get those up for you.
Well, thank you for asking me. And I think I'm going to add to the depression in many ways, but still. The first slide you're going to see is it shows that it can be done successfully. I mean, the slide shows three pictures, and one of them is a very good passive house retrofit that was done in Camden, of a housing cooperative. The other pictures are, as you'll see here, the other pictures are from, well, we've been looking all over Europe to find what training is going on in terms of low energy construction and retrofit. These are pictures actually from an Italian training centre. It's often quite difficult in Britain to find good examples of training. Can I have the next slide, please? And this is a very serious problem. I think it's already been pointed out by Susan, this problem, but I think we have to realize that retrofit requires significantly more knowledge, eliminating thermal bridges and knowledge of new materials, of climate literacy, and know-how and competencies. And these are not generally in the curriculum. These pictures here at the top are from a retrofit training centre in Enniscorthy in Ireland, where they've set up a special training centre to train. They've been rolling out a programme for the entire construction workforce in Ireland. Pity they don't do it here. So we need more knowledge, and I think this implies that we need to transform the vocational education system and upgrade it, because there's two things that are essential for retrofit. One is that workers have an understanding of the whole building and how it works, and also overcoming the occupational interfaces. That's, the interface between whether it's the bricklayer and the carpenter, but these are where the leakages occur, and also breaking down this very sharp division between professionals and workers on sites, and creating career progression, which again is a big problem at the moment. And also retrofitting above all needs integrated team working. So if you're going to have a subcontract chain, it needs very, very strict regulation, and ideally everybody should be directly employed. And also, of course, I think, as Susan has pointed out, you need to, a lot of stakeholders are involved: educationalists, employers, employees, unions. Next slide, please. Thank you. There's three big problems to achieving this. And I think the first problem is, as Ellen's pointed out, the private construction sector. 95 to 98% of firms are either very small or micro firms. That means that they actually do not have the capacity to train people, certainly to provide work-based experience. Half the workforce is self-employed, often called bogus self-employed. There's severe skill shortages. There's a big recruitment crisis. I mean, we shouldn't forget that the workforce is predominantly male. It's an aging workforce. There's few young people or women in it, and there's a reliance on migrant labour. And it's very factional. You've got professional silos, you've got very divided trades, and an often very fragmented labour process. And of course, these very sharp contractual divisions between different trades, contracted on a different basis. Can I have the next slide? Thank you. So that was problem number one, the construction industry, private construction industry. What problem number two is that anyway, the workforce it is only, I mean, only represents half. I mean, women represent possibly 1% if you're lucky. They have a big problem to come into the industry. They rely largely on planning Section 106 requirements, which set numbers of training and apprentices on different sites. Um, they also rely on recruitment, which is much more targeted, and generally they come through the further education colleges, and they rely very much on direct labour and on good employment conditions and structured working hours, which is often very difficult to find in the private construction sector. This picture is a wonderful picture of a delegation we had of 60 tradeswomen, um, and many of whom were very keen to get involved in environmental construction or low energy construction, given the opportunity. So the next slide, please. And this is going to be the most depressing, I think. This is the picture that we are at the moment. If we look in the further education colleges, you can find about 100,000 construction students, but only 16% of those manage to go on to get an apprenticeship. It's even lower for electricians, below 10%. So, and of those who start an apprenticeship in 2022 to 3, the dropout rate was 47%. So completions, if we look at completions, they were 13,550, rather short of trying to create this 2 million construction workforce, retrofit workforce that Ellen's pointed to. And the estimate is that what we need is 250,000 new apprenticeships in the next 10 years. We're nowhere like that. It's often called employer disengagement, but really, I mean, most firms do not have either the capacity, or they're running on short-term contracts. They don't have the portfolio of future contracts to provide the work-based training needed. And this creates this performance gap, which is the gap between the design intention and what actually happens. Particularly, I mean, there's been lots of studies now of heat pump installation suffers seriously from performance gap. I think what is needed is a comprehensive, broad, recognised vocational education programme which incorporates climate literacy, so that the workers know why they're doing what they're doing and what impact it's having. And that really needs at least a level 3. And most training in this country is level 2, if you're lucky, and often relies just on short private training courses. And the possibility of career progression is very limited. And overcoming these professional silos and divided trades. So, I mean, there are possibilities. We can see them. There's a domestic electrician which incorporates certain aspects of environmental aspects. There's now these retrofit coordinators and assessors, and an electro-technical apprentice framework. But the big problem which Susan's experienced is insulation. I should say that insulation apprenticeship was only recognised in July last year. It's only up to level 2 when you need at least a level 3. In most countries, insulation has been a recognised occupation for, well, probably 100 years in Germany. It's a 4-year training in Canada. So we're really at a very bad situation in terms of insulation. Next slide, please. So, I mean, what's needed is, as in Ireland, really to get the existing workforce up to scratch, and then because we need the trainers as well, and the potentially benign circle of getting continuing vocational education, and so that we can then start getting good work trainees, and an up-to-date workforce. These are again from the training that's going on in Ireland. Next slide, please. So we're not just talking about green jobs, but we need to transform conditions in the industry, and retrofit really requires decent work. And so we can't just keep talking about skills development because there's knowledge, competencies, and upgrading the whole vocational education system, and really having obligatory climate literacy training. Much more involvement of the workforce if the teamwork and hierarchies be broken down, and in particular to involve the unions, because after all, certainly in terms of training, the unions were excluded under Thatcher and throughout the 90s, and even today they're very marginalised in their involvement in training. And we need a much more inclusivity, recruiting all those who've been excluded if we're going to get wide-scale retrofit programs to be accomplished. Next slide. I'm always pointing to the only example that, although it certainly has certain problems, but the only example of where things do seem to be it provides some kind of inspiration is Glasgow city building, which employs 2,200 construction workers directly, regulates the contract chain, is highly unionized, and has developed large-scale inclusive training provision and workshops. They employ 60 new apprentices they take on each year. And also they're of course developing social housing, which has quite extensive energy cost reduction. The picture here is of a retrofit scheme at the top right, a retrofit scheme of 350 units, which was carried out with a ground source heat pump, which you can see in the photo below, because it needs quite a large unit if you could, for that number of housing. But in the middle, you can see what's been developed as the Glasgow greenhouse. And I mean, this points to one possible solution, that the local authorities should directly employ the workforce to build up a workforce, and that they could provide then the necessary future work experience for trainees, because they would at sufficient stock. Can I have the next slide? And this brings us on to, I mean, in Glasgow they are doing the Glasgow Direct Labour repairs and maintains the whole building stock in Glasgow. And what we've been working on in where I live in Islington is really looking at the possibilities of the direct labour departments, that's the local authority building departments, actually undertaking large-scale retrofit schemes. Now, I'm fortunate to live in Islington, which has been very systematically insourcing, and also has still an enormous stock of council housing, 25,500 social units, and plus leasehold properties. So 36,000 properties they're responsible for altogether. In Camden, it's rather similar, 32,000. And they're beginning, Islington got set up its DLO in 2014, and is now which now repairs or undertakes all the repair of the workforce, and employs about 150, similar to Camden, and is taking on apprentices. But there is certainly room there, and there's also lots of studies going on about retrofitting particular estates which suffer from fuel poverty. Next slide. So I'm coming to an end now, but I'm a great believer in the significance of direct labour organisations for carrying out cost-effective large-scale retrofitting of council properties in order to tackle fuel poverty and reduce energy consumption and carbon emissions. I mean, we shouldn't forget housing's responsible for 33% of end-use emissions, and the built environment for 40%. So they've got such a long history. I mean, I'd love to go into it now. The direct labour was set up under the inspiration of the municipal socialist movement in the 1890s. And over the years, which is what we've been studying, they've been responsible, the DLOs, for very large projects. at different time periods, particularly after the First and Second World War, and then into the 70s when they employed a lot of women. So I think we could, if they worked together with the FE colleges, they could begin to overcome some of the problems of the private construction sector, above all this terrible failure of insulation and the performance gap, through providing good quality work and employment of those who were previously excluded, particularly women. So that's my message really. That DLOs can employ and unionize workforce directly under good, secure employment with conditions. And I should say that this is also the policy of both the TUC and of Union, Unite the Union. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Linda. Brilliant presentation. Much appreciated that yeah, as you said, starting to see a solution emerge. Just trying to get back to here we go, to my window. And building on this, we are now going to hear from Glyn Oliver, who is Branch Secretary of Unite Community, Southampton area, and the coordinator of Unite Community National Housing Action Group. Very relevant to have you here, Glyn. I believe you're going to speak on why retrofit is a trade union issue, building on what Linda said already and what Unite Community is currently doing. Take it away, Glyn. Thank you for being with us. You're just going to have to unmute yourself, Glyn. Oh.
Yeah, there we go. Good. We had Linda came to our one of our meetings recently, and with that presentation, it's very interesting. And it's inspired us on the group a lot, and I'll tell you about that. But just to say to Linda that the Tony O'Brien from the Fuel Poverty Action Group, I don't know if he's still involved with them, has written a book about the history of direct labour organisations. I've got a copy, and I don't know if it still is available, but it's worth a read. Also, he told us at a meeting about how squatting in London, particularly, was very big after the war, how they went into older houses and upgraded them, I suppose, and retrofitted them, if you like, in terms. So that's very interesting. And one of my dreams is that the zombie housing built for investment, people storm them and squat them. It would be wonderful to see, wouldn't it? So I just want to just tell you a bit about our group. I mean, I think the best bit about our union group will be about potential. You know, we've had a resilient past, but I think we have a brighter future, really, hopefully. We have the potential, and we seek to apply pressure. So potential, pressure, and power, hopefully, the power that trade unions have if they use them. And that's what we're about, really. It's obvious that the government aren't too concerned about given this last fiasco, disastrous fiasco that Susan told us about. It will need trade unions like ours to get involved. So our group is a group of trade unionists within Unite who some are on the call tonight, including Ellen and Charles and Jenny and Pam and other people who strongly believe that the housing crisis is very much a trade union issue. We just Unite. We don't know about other housing campaigns and other unions, but we'd certainly like to know, because housing impacts the physical, mental health of union members and their ability of their community to thrive, of course. You know, when the kids go to school, the doctors, everything, decent housing, healthy humans. So our group works with others and within our union to campaign for radical change for working people. It's because everyone needs a roof over their heads, is an obvious point, isn't it? With dry, secure walls around them that are planned, built, and maintained by well-trained, skilled tradespeople, men, and ever more women who understand comfort, insulation, air movements, ventilation. And like all the people on this call tonight, we all want warm homes, good jobs, and a safer climate before all our houses get washed away, whatever condition they're in. So it's so important, such an important issue, and we need secure tenures and then to rip off rents, service charges, unscrupulous landlords and freeholders. We got the power. We have the power, but we need to start to use it. So we started as an unofficial grouping of like-minded activists. We meet every Friday morning, except for Christmas, for an hour or so to discuss housing issues, evictions, disrepair, homelessness, rents, service charges, the whole calamity of the housing crisis in the UK in the social and the private rented sectors. And once a month, we have a presentation from a housing campaigner. We've had recently Peter Apps, the ex-deputy editor of Inside Housing, Professor Stephen Walker on the myth of affordability, this idea that these houses are somehow affordable. Grace Lally of XR Housing, we talked about activism. We've had London Renters Union, Paula Peters from DPAC, and we had Professor Linda Clark, so wonderful, well worth seeing. We've worked with Southampton University Law Faculty to organise a housing conference and an international symposium on housing campaigning throughout Europe, which was fascinating to see what they're doing in Spain, particularly, and Ireland as well. We've submitted evidence to the all parliamentary party group on council housing. That was Charles, particularly. I worked on that. We work closely with Homes for All, with SHAC, with the Labour campaign for council housing and the homeless charity in Sussex. We are currently promoting Homes for All leaflet on migrants don't cause the housing crisis. This is against the reform, disgraceful myths they put around. So up until now, our group has had a fairly low profile in our union, I'd say, but we punch above our weight. We're still a small group, but we're broadening our influence inside our union. In the 5 or 6 years of our existence, we've been very resilient, I think, in spite of leadership gatekeepers who keep the housing campaign gates shut. It's all jobs, pay, and conditions. That's been the mantra. But the factory gate now is opening a little bit and looking outside a bit. So there's a gap. So we were Southeast Region Housing Group recently, but we've become a national group now. So our status is growing, and we are one of 4 main subgroups on the National Community Forum. And we're in the process of establishing an alliance of all Unite Housing associated members and groups. It seems it should have been done a long time ago, but anyway, we're getting that going. And it's been difficult getting reps from all these different sectors and areas together, but we do have key players on board now to help us in this. And we aim to put pressure on our gargantuan bureaucratic union to be far more aware of the housing crisis, for them to develop a plan and a strategy that helps housing for our members. Unite have now agreed in this last few months to set up a dedicated housing campaign unit to get back to the profile Unite used to have in housing campaigning years ago. They used to produce these leaflets, a home is a human right. Really good stuff. And that's what we want to get back to, that sort of being out there with this as a union. So it's been great, really has recently, to have input from others like Ellen, who spoke earlier, and Linda, and they've made us really aware of retrofit and government schemes that haven't worked, as Susan was telling us, and how they should work. And Unite Community believes that we can help make sure it can work and does work. And we're involved in lots of other campaigns, mostly not about housing issues as well in Unite Community, cost of living, against benefit cuts, winter fuels, nationalising utilities. But tempting it is to get involved in these campaigns. We need to ensure we develop housing as a specific strand of our union policy. And when it comes to retrofitting, it's an ideal campaign for our union. What's not to like? The establishment of a nationwide program of retrofitting, filling and improving empty homes, bringing back direct labour organisation rather than piecemeal subcontracting cowboys. It is the potential. Glasgow, Islington, Camden show the way, and it's great to hear about the Glasgow scheme and the strong union involvement. So serious training here and important climate literacy initiatives, serious, good, worthwhile jobs, more tradespeople, more skills shared, good union representation for decent pay conditions. So, with all this, filling empty homes, retrofitted homes, building council homes, we all end up for better housing for everyone. So, it's a real win-win-win. So, if you're in Unite Community, I'll finish with this. If you're in Unite Community or want to come along anyway, get involved in our union-based housing campaign group to work alongside this group and others, and to work within Unite the Union. Because, we are all about potential, and it's about what we do, I think, really. So when it comes to housing and union action, we are building work of our own to do. That's it for me.
Thank you so much for that, Glyn. For that, somewhat of a hopeful note there. Although, yes, there is clearly a lot of work to be done. Coming, and I think something feels like it's coming out from this session for me is that there's quite a few points to start campaigning on this issue, from unions to our councils. Yeah, and to quite a few other actors as well in this chain here that lead to retrofit. But it's now time to hand over to our lovely attendees here, the rest of you that are here, to come in with your comments, your questions, clarifications, your contributions. Please raise your virtual hand. You can find that on the React button there at the bottom of your screen. Yeah, some of you have had a lot to say already in the chat. I want to invite Deborah, Diane, some more of you to come in and ask your questions. That would be wonderful. But yeah, let's start with Ruth. Good to have you. Good to see you here. Let me do this little bit first. Sorry, you won't be able to unmute yourself just yet. Let me get to that. There we go. Sorry, just bear with me one more second. Oh, no, you should be able to. Yeah, there you go. Sorry, go for it, Ruth.
Yeah. Okay, couple things. First of all, I had a question for Susan about how to operate the system where they don't get paid until it's proven that people are getting lower bills as a result. I've had some questions from people in the industry about, well, how could that possibly work? Because, we need our money straight up front or we won't do the work. So just like any ideas you have on how that can operate. But I also wanted to just connect this with the other big campaign that Fuel Poverty Action's working on now, which is Make Green Fair. And part of that is about things that are supposed to be making our homes better, like heat pumps and solar panels and heat networks, and very often end up being incredibly costly and not doing what they're supposed to, and in the worst cases, wrecking our homes. But our campaign about Make Green Fair is about actually identifying all of that and making clear that everybody ought to be able to benefit from the transition, the renewable energy and the new technology, and not just people at the high end of the economic scale with electric vehicles and so on. So we're having I don't know if you're planning, Amal, to do a call out for our petition for Make Green Fair, and which we're handing in on the 1st of July with a demonstration in London. But that's all stuff that can be looked up on our website. Maybe you could put a link. And I also wanted to mention a couple of opportunities that I think are not always seen. Like, I live in a housing co-op, and when the repair person comes, I know him and I tell him about everything. And I'm sure that in a lot of housing estates, that doesn't happen. You get somebody you've never seen before in your life, and they're in a rush and they're under pressure. And all the opportunities for finding out what's wrong before it gets really bad are lost because there's this great division, like what Linda was talking about, between just the repair person and somebody who might be an expert. So can we add that to Linda's list of breaking the barriers down? And the other barrier is at election time, all the parties go round door to door asking people how they're going to vote. What would happen if every party also asked, what's wrong with your house? And you'd get a fantastic database. That's it.
Good.
Thanks, Ruth. Quite a lot there. Do you want to, Linda, there was, sorry, I feel like Susan, there was a question for you.
Hi, yeah, thanks for the question. Admittedly, these were thoughts based upon the real fact that nothing is measured. Success of retrofit is never measured. And so how can we hold those accountable for the design of the retrofit and whether the intended design has met the objective and whether those who benefit from eco credits can successfully claim, because ultimately at the end of the day we're here to affect climate change, and that's obviously what the main ultimate driver is for retrofit, and also to reduce fuel poverty. But I've not seen anybody who's asked the question, have we achieved what we set out to achieve? And so in terms of a mechanism through which you can incentivize people, I mean, maybe not paying is maybe too much of an extreme, but maybe there are other mechanisms that could be used. But at the moment, I have not seen any statistics which show real success versus planned success. People are paid on the install. Projects are secured through promised savings, and I don't see any closed loop in that process. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Ruth, sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I absolutely believe in it. And the reason I asked that was not because I don't think it can be done. I just thought you might have some specific ideas about exactly how it can be done. But I think it's absolutely essential. We can't be,
Yeah,
splashing out money for people to make savings that are never actually appear. It just wants a lot more
yeah,
work into actually,
yeah.
how to make that accountability real.
It is a concept, and it's a throwaway concept I probably thought about over the last couple of days. But yes, definitely needs further thought, but it definitely needs to happen as to what are the
Absolutely.
mechanisms to do that. But it's a good question. I mean, clearly a good point is people, these contractors are need the funds for their own personal cash, for their cash flow, but there has to be some way of measuring that. And it will drive better quality surveys. It will just drive so much when people are held accountable for the work that they promise will deliver X, Y, and Z. And if it's not delivering, that I think it will hone skills, thoughts, honesty, integrity within the industry up front, because a lot of things are failed up front before they, such as surveys and everything else. So
Also,
Thanks
they
a lot.
shouldn't be allowed to take on another job, another project if the first one hasn't produced results.
yeah.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for that. Ruth, was there another question in there
No, go
that
on
you
to
had?
someone else.
No? Yeah.
That,
Okay.
that's fine.
Okay. Thank you both. Deborah, would you like to come in?
Yeah, hi. I'm from the SSB Law Victim Support Group. Lots of victims of cavity wall insulation going back to Eco 1, Eco 2, Green Deal, the earlier schemes. We support retrofit, but it's got to be safe, accountable, and properly remedied when things go wrong. And what struck me about tonight is how closely the Eco 4 issues mirror what earlier victims of failed schemes I've experienced for many, many years. And it's like fragmented responsibility, weak oversight, inadequate consumer protection, and households being passed between bodies. It really resonated with me what Susan was saying, because like there is no solution to it. And my concern is if reform only focuses on current schemes, earlier victims will be left outside the frame and the wider systemic failure will not be addressed. I really welcome the points made about workshop training, the direct labour models. That was really good. The union involvement was brilliant. Public accountability. And for me, public protection and workforce reform are two sides of the same problem. It's like we need warm homes, good jobs, safe retrofit, but also clear responsibility and proper remedy for households that are already harmed. So, how can earlier schemes be included?
That is a very, very good question. How can earlier schemes be included? Do any of our speakers have any responses to that?
It's pooling the money, government, into creating a truly independent body. I don't want to create bodies over bodies, but at the moment there is no one body who takes accountability, and that needs to be set up, and it will require money and resources against it to identify these people and to work through all of the issues.
I mean, look at Grenfell, what a disgusting whole thing that has been, isn't it? The accountability, the lack of accountability, they just don't seem to want to prosecute or bring these companies to account. It's the same as retrofit, it seems to me, disgraceful.
Linda, do you want to come in on this?
I just wanted to say something about the earlier schemes. I mean, if we look back at the 70s, the housing action areas, that's the kind of thing we want again, where you divide the whole country into these different housing action areas, housing improvement areas, where they went by various names, and put significant funding behind them. That really, really, systematically improving the housing stock.
And do you think that, sorry, is someone else coming in?
Sorry.
Yeah, Susan.
The thing is as well, if you were to think like a politician, which is difficult to do, but you would think that you're walking into a 15 billion scheme, which I guess is not a huge amount of money in the big scheme of things, but do you really want to walk into that knowing nothing is going to change and you're going to have even more problems in the future? I don't understand the logic and the psychology of somebody in power who knows full well of all of the issues that have been created and just wants to plow on anyway. Maybe I'm being naive.
No, I don't think so. Thank you. Where were you? Sorry, I've lost you on my screen now. Oh yeah, Deborah, did you want to any final points on this?
No, it's just, like I'm representing hundreds of people, but we know that there's thousands that are affected, and the government don't have any records at all from those earlier schemes. So there's no way of actually knowing how many households were affected, and this is a real problem. And there's no, the guarantees aren't worth the paper they're written on. We're sort of doing a deep dive into that at the moment, and it's such a challenge.
Yeah, thanks for, well, it sounds like brilliant work that you're doing there, Deborah.
Thank you for these calls. It's been really interesting so far. Thank you.
Pleasure. Robin, did anyone else have any direct points on this actually? Before we go, yes, Jenny, I thought you might, yeah.
And me, yeah, thank you.
I was just going to say that as well as putting up warm words, you have to make sure that the bodies set up to make sure things are accountable really do have teeth. Otherwise, loads of warm words will be spouted, but nothing will in effect be done.
Yeah, absolutely. And one more.
Hello.
Hi, Steve.
Hiya. Shall I? Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, we all know that it's the aggregate value of the housing market that dictates everything, and the people who run the housing market. And so, past retrofit disaster, besides current retrofit and other disasters, are actually irrelevant to these people. So we're going to turn it upside down, change it completely.
Thank you, Steve. I think I speak for everyone when I think we would agree with that sentiment. Yeah. Oh, Charlie as well on this one. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was just that this issue with the insurance-backed guarantees that was just mentioned by Deborah. I want to agree with wholeheartedly. I'm trying to talk an installer out of insisting on past 2035 compliance because he's telling me that in order to do that, he has to use a detail that I don't think is up to the job, and that way he can have an IBG. The householder is not interested in IBG because they're not worth the paper they were written on, as Deborah just said. And I feel like we need to get back to a version that was around when I started in this, back when I was young and better looking, 40 odd years ago, where you actually had somebody who was instructing the contractors what to do, who knew what they were doing, and then supervised the work. We seem to have created this false construct of through past 2035 that looks persuasive from a distance, but when you look up closely, it's just not fit for purpose. I would really love to recruit the trade union movement into working with those of us that are on the front line of trying to make retrofit work, to actually bring a little bit of, what dare I say, progressive thinking into how we make this work. We need a great deal less reliance on profiteering and market instruments, and an awful lot more reliance on a public sector participation in trying to make this work, so that people are driven by outcomes, as I think Susan said in hers, are not driven by profit.
Thank you very much for those thoughts, Charlie.
Can I just come in? Can I come in there just quickly?
Go for it, yeah.
Dead right. I mean, it's about need, not profit. And that's why we want our unions to be looking at what we used to call, do you remember the social wage? Things like housing, things like health, things about public utilities. And there's a great lack there, and there's a vacuum, it seems to me. It's being filled by other actors that don't care about our society. But I think we've really got to get trade unions back using muscle. I mean, that's what I think we need. We need pressure, muscle, and saying this is our society, mate. It's not yours, profiteer. It's our society, and we're going to make sure it works for us. You can see so many people in every walk of life saying it doesn't work for us. Well, I think we're the agents, the best agents, to make sure that things like this are planned and carried out in a decent way, rather than just always after the money, aren't they? And people are left left behind, and it's not on. So that's why I'm in a trade union.
Good. All right, if it's okay, I'm going to move on to Robin.
Yeah, I don't have anything to do with any of this. I just came in because I'm interested in retrofitting. I used to work
Welcome.
as oh, cheers, prof. I used to work as an electrician, and I started back in the day at the Olympic Park, but the environment was so horrible. I managed about 2 years because of on-site atmosphere. So I'm very interested in hearing what Linda's talking about, because I can't talk about, the regulations and how things should be done, but I do recognize change happens when women turn up in force in a workspace, and construction is not that. I'm re-entering it now, but I'm a lot older and I can take all the rubbish that some of the men may be behaving like on the site now. But I'm really interested in what Linda was saying about the numbers of women coming into construction, the number of ethnic minorities going into construction, the training. Like, I'm going to have to pay about 7 grand to become a gold card electrician now, and it's all out of my own pocket, and it's all private educational companies who are ex-electricians, obviously, gold card or approved, who are now setting up educational schools, but they're very expensive, prof. They're very expensive, and not all of them are in cities. So you're not only paying for your course, you're then paying for accommodation in a hotel. And then if you add a bit of sexiness to that, getting work experience, even though it's very exciting to work in electrical and be able to work on heat pumps or renewables and that, because now there's so much technology that helps you so you can be equal to men because of strength. Getting the work experience when you're older, apprenticeships, the companies can't afford them. They don't have the time to train people. Many adverts say if you are not experienced, we will not have you. Or you're having to do work experience for absolutely nothing to gain the experience so you can eventually go on to the job. So, Linda, I'd be very happy to, I mean, I'm not sure if I'll ever meet you guys again, but I'll be very interested in what can be done about getting that education, getting that work experience. So it's not super expensive, because, like I said, it's going to be about, and that's not tools, that's not a vehicle, that's not anything else. And just lastly, with the whole retrofit thing, I'm interested because I used to be more of an environmental activist, and I think my time is over and I want to do something more practical. But I'm telling you now, most of the public doesn't know anything about retrofit. Where are the examples of houses that normal people can see and go, oh, is this how it works? Oh, and what's your experience been about? It's very in the air. And I think the people who are doing the retrofit, which is great, I can't tell you one person I know who's done a retrofit, and I've got a wide range of people from different backgrounds. I can't tell you of one. So make sure retrofit is visible to the public. Get more women involved, because more women being involved means they want to do more environmental things. Most of the lads are just trying to struggle to pay their bills and look after their families, and it's not necessarily that the environment is their number one gig. And the last thing I would say is there are bodies like NAPIT, bodies like Seth. Is it worth talking to these groups? Those are not one's a governing body, one's more of an electrical distributor. Is it worth talking to those kind of companies talking about retrofit, and trying to get them to talk to their members about it? Because we may not have the swag. Do you know what I mean? We may not have the belief because they don't know who we are. But if you get those kind of companies involved and they can see it's the direction that you're going in, they'll be doing the talking for you. Anyway, thanks. But Linda, I'd love to hear if there's any ideas about how to increase women, ethnic minorities to go into these trades that can be doing this retrofit work. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Robin. I just want to, Linda, before I let you, I give you Robin's question. I just want to, be aware that we're at coming up to 8 o'clock. I would love to get through everyone's questions, so let's try and please, speakers, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. If you don't mind staying another 5-10 minutes, that would be amazing. Thank you.
Shall I answer that, Amal?
Yes, go for it, Linda. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, the last time, back again to direct labour, the last time there were large numbers of women, or relatively large numbers, was in the 1970s with the direct labour departments. I mean, Haringey had 100 women employed in the direct labour department, and the same across, I think it was 7 London boroughs employed about 300 women altogether. And so, and and the same in areas like Leicester in the direct labour department, where they've made a big point of recruiting ethnic minorities. Because I'm glad that Robin Red raised this question of ethnic minorities because they're remarkably underrepresented according to in relation to their numbers in the construction industry. It's a really exclusive industry, including, of course, blacklisted workers. So, the local authorities could be employing ethnic minority groups, women, those who've been blacklisted from the industry, as of course happened in the Olympics and various other sites. So, yeah, I think the possibility is that it raises the possibility of him being much more inclusive and showing what that means.
Thank you, Linda. I'm going to move swiftly to Ellen. Oh, you're muted, Ellen.
Sorry, yes, that what I was going to say, but I knew that other people would make the same point, and they have done throughout the meeting. But the fact that a lot of the things that have been raised, what they illustrate is that neither the climate emergency nor the housing crisis can be resolved by the market, and it can't be resolved with this hodgepodge of little grants and so-called incentives to homeowners and lenders and training providers and trainees. It does require extensive public ownership, an integrated workforce that are publicly employed. So, everyone's got the same employer. You can have collective bargaining for decent pay and conditions, which go hand in hand with decent standards and decent training. And you've got integrated workforce planning and technology planning for, a really efficient energy transition, of which housing upgrades are such a crucial part. And you've got then a secure public employment framework for workers. And so, this is why we in the little book I was talking about, we say, we should demand a comprehensive programme of public works delivered by local authorities in collaboration with local training providers, with unionised direct labour organisations. And also, I would just addressing, there's a difficult, but it's not a unique problem that we've got to integrate these interventions in the domestic sphere, like rooftop solar and home battery storage, which we see as kind of individual consumer choices, but they have to be integrated with the wider energy system, and we've got to discuss a way of doing that. And I might as well just finish off here, mightn't I? Just because we're nearly out of time. So I'm really, really interested in, we do need a campaign from the bottom up. We have got some trade union involvement now in workforce transition planning, but it's very much a sort of a top-down kind of thing. We need mass involvement. We need workers coming out publicly on social media, in the mainstream media, identifying the barriers and the training needs, arguing for the delivery models that are going to work. Talking about the barriers that they experience in developing a career in retrofit. But also we need to, like Glyn said, trade unionism needs to not begin and end at the factory gate or at the office gate or wherever. Climate change is a universal threat. Good housing is a universal need, and workers and unions in every sector need to be involved in organising and building that demand. Alongside climate activists and grassroots community groups. We've had campaigns before, and quite recently, attempts to build mass campaigns around retrofit, but the unions and the workers have been largely missing from that, and so we do need to build those bridges. And I think that's going to be my final word for today. So sorry to go on a bit.
No worries. Thanks a lot, Ellen. Much appreciated. Diane?
Okay. Two things. First, I'll start with hope, with a good attitude. There's big government changes happening right now, or there's big political changes happening around here in this area. For example, we've been a really Labour-only council for 40 years, and suddenly we're nearly a Green council. We've got 28 out of whatever number of Green councillors. It's the first time it's ever happened, so we've got a small chance that change might happen. The reason we need, obviously we all know the reason we need change, it's been rubbish for a long time. But one of the things that when I first started playing with, shall we say, fuel poverty action, one of the first things we did was go to one of the estates that had got fuel pumps and all that sort of heating, and it had been done badly. And for me, it was a symptom of the great British worker, how there is no such thing as a great British worker. British workers at the time and through my life, so it's actually quite long, have been, we're the ones that want lots of tea breaks. We're not prepared to make an effort. And when a decent job started getting done, it was when all the Albanians started coming and doing the job for us. So now the words that we've had just during this conversation about minority groups, I think it wasn't that, but yeah, it was minority groups, ethnic minorities. We haven't got any of them. They've all been thrown out. All the decent workers have gone away. So, and the people, we went this week to an all-party parliamentary group that actually was obviously all parties, and therefore people from Exeter University, for example, who are training kids and young people. The main guy was saying that his course is full. They've got lots of people want to train and be like it. I don't think he's got many girls on there, to be honest. But when they leave, they can't get a job. There's not enough jobs. So, and mostly my own experience, lived experience, is that my grandchildren and lots of people of that age group, they just want money. This is, there's no incentive. We need to make retrofitting attractive so that it come from both ends. It needs to come from the government, need to put rulings around that makes rulings and systems and processes that make sure that the jobs have been checked and the people have been round. Susan, is it the lady that had all the trouble? But I mean, I've had the same thing in my house. They fitted in terrible heating situation, and then the man came and just ripped the stuff off the wall and just saying, this is terrible. Nobody came and put it right. So when the gas man came round this week, he said, oh, this is terrible, isn't it? Yes, it is. It's terrible, and it's been like it for 20 years. I'm just tired. I'm not going to moan anymore. I'm not a moaner. I'll just put up with it, which is really not great. But therefore, we've got to work from the top and put the ruling in, but also from the bottom. We need to encourage our young people to have some kind of job satisfaction or pride in what they do. We want to keep people warm and housed properly and stuff like that. There's nothing, all they're interested in really, all my grandchildren are interested in, is getting lots of money. They don't care how they get it, and doing a good job is irrelevant. So we need to encourage that. We've got to do something to change the whole attitude of all the people. So education first, and with structure from government as well. Start at the bottom and the top. We need to work from both directions. That'll do.
Thank you, Diane. And Charles, some final words?
Yes, thank you, Mel. Yeah, I think it's a really good session, and I mean we were all shocked by Susan's account of of a retrofit that's gone very badly, and I think this has been quite a common experience. But on the other hand, there have been some community groups. I posted a link to the Lewis eco homes because a number of residents have done various measures to improve the energy performance of their homes. And there's a whole spectrum of things you can do to improve energy. I mean, the gold standard is passive house, Enefit, and then there are all sorts of things like you can put a curtain,
curtain behind your front door and that sort of thing. But I suppose the main point is that uh, that the housing provision has suffered from financialisation. No more can we say that a decent home is a human right. That this focus on maximising money is something which is going to be a big challenge to overcome. And this is why I think that we do need a central government action. This has got to come from the top. And there are so many well, there are a whole range of companies that engage in what we call greenwashing. And it's not really so much about saving the planet. It's about making a few bob out of something that looks like it could be beneficial. I think I'll stop there. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you so much, Charles. Much appreciated. Yeah, just thank you, everyone. Thank you. A special thank you to our speakers. Thank you to all our attendees. I'm gonna re-mention that Fuel Poverty Action is putting on a demo for Make Green Fair on the 1st of July. The link is in the chat. Join there, and there's also a petition on which you can read more about Make Green Fair and what we're asking for. Also in there, Holly, my colleague, has just put in some more links to become a member of Fuel Poverty Action, and yeah, very importantly, let us know how you found this session. Clearly, it sparks so much discussion, and Ellen actually is planning on putting on another one on the subject at some point in the near future. Ellen, do you want to say a little word about that?
Well, yes, I think we've said quite a bit about the relevance of trade unions here, and the quite obvious fact that the energy transition and the solving the housing crisis, or the crisis of livable homes, I should say, is very much an issue of a labour transition and a workforce creation, a skilled workforce. Yeah, I'm now very self-conscious about using the term skills, because I totally take Linda's point about the way that term is sort of used in the context of a kind of a narrow, kind of fragmented sort of training model, instead of the holistic understanding that people really need to do this work properly. But yeah, and as I said a moment ago, I think we have had attempts at building a mass pressure from below for a strong retrofit programme, and the trade unions have been largely absent from that, and people have been largely, apart from people who sort of, we've got some very committed practitioners, and some of them have been here tonight, that are working on their own or in cooperatives and things like that. But and so I think somebody talked about the need for those people with that experience to be talking to the trade unions as well, which I think is very important. But so what I want to do as a kind of follow-up to this is to convene a meeting which is looking absolutely focused on the issue of why retrofit is a trade union issue, why it needs to be a trade union issue, and what we can actually do as trade unionists, not just as people who work in the housing sector, in whether it's as in an administrative or a technical trade or whatever, but like using our muscle, as Glyn said. Trade unionists are supposed to use their muscle to bring about positive social change, to bring about positive change for the entire working class, not just their own sector. So let's bring those people together and build some kind of, I don't know, like a housing caucus for trade unionists. I don't know, but let's bring those people together and talk about how we can take that aspect of it forward and take our place within the wider campaign for decent housing. Does that all make sense?
Absolutely.
And so hopefully people that have attended tonight will be informed about that going forward.
Yeah, certainly we'll make sure of that. Thanks so much, Ellen. Next Fuel for Thought will be on the 18th of June. Put the date in the diary, and I'll be in touch very soon. For now, have a great evening. Give us a wave. Say good night. See you next time. Bye.